But how did these knights, sworn to poverty, become the wealthiest and most powerful institution in Christendom? How did these dedicated soldiers of the faith come to incur the terrible charges of blasphemy and heresy which were levelled against them? Fascinating though these questions were, I began to ask myself if the mystery of the Templars was truly a part of my main task, the unravelling of the puzzle of the 19th century priest Béranger Saunière and his tiny village. I felt that the Templars had to be left to one side, unless I could find something more tangible to link their presence here with the fabric of the local story. True, there were links, but were they important? Important to the story of Saunière, the penniless priest, which I knew so well. The priest who began in poverty, and yet spent millions. Who made a discovery in his church of the parchments which hid secret messages. One speaking of a treasure belonging to Dagobert and to Zion. And the other more complex, more cryptic. Shepherdess, no temptation, to which Poussin Teniers hold the key. Peace, 681. By the cross and this horse of God, I complete this demon guardian at midday. Blue apples. The message which led Saunière to the painting by Poussin of the supposedly imaginary tomb which yet exists in the countryside nearby. The obvious relevance of the painting led me to undertake a detailed examination of it, and I found what seemed to me to be a curious and rigid geometry. I sought the guidance of Professor Christopher Cornford of the Royal College of Art, who has made a special study of the geometry of paintings. He found a totally unexpected and quite startling underlying structure, and it was pentagonal. The pentagon is formed by overlapping regular triangles, whose angles are 36 degrees, 72 degrees and 72 degrees, a five-pointed star. Professor Cornford suggested that if Poussin was saying anything, it was that pentagons and the angles of a pentagon were important. Perhaps I should look for them in association with Rennes-le-Château. Regular triangles. What possible connection could there be between geometry and the priest who found treasure in a sleepy Pyrenean village? Then I remembered that Rennes-le-Château is only one of 3 castles vital to this story. Blanchefort, Bézieux, and of course Rennes-le-Château itself. Each castle is on a natural mountain peak. I could not possibly have imagined how amazingly Christopher Cornford's theory would be confirmed by that triangle of castles, the angles which they form, 72 degrees, 72 degrees, and 36 degrees. Coincidence? The accuracy is astonishing. Were these 3 castles placed on these mountain peaks because of their pentagonal relationship? And is this surprising geometric regularity of natural forms what Poussin is indicating in his Bergers d'Arcadie? As we shall see, this is in fact only a small part of the amazing truth which this painting is intended to convey. For the moment, it's sufficient to turn our attention to these 3 mountain castles and to look more closely into their history.
It's important to remember that I wasn't looking for anything specific. I was merely asking myself, what is there?
The second parchment is just as important in the whole story as the first. In 1971, Lincoln's interpretation of the message in the first parchment and a foray into the history of the area surrounding Rennes-le-Château had provided him with enough material for a short 20-minute film. Out of the blue, de Sède, who'd been in contact with Lincoln during the filming, now sent him a decipherment of this second parchment. The hidden message is in French. In English, it reads, "Shepherdess, no temptation, that Poussin Tenier hold the key, peace 681, by the cross, and this horse of God I complete, this daemon guardian, at midday, blue apples." Utterly meaningless on the face of it. But there was one tenuous link to a part of the story that hitherto had seemed insignificant. In Le Trésor Maudit, de Sède had reported that Saunière had originally taken the parchments he found to Paris to be examined by experts. Before returning to his village, he'd visited the Louvre Museum, where he'd bought reproductions of 3 paintings: The Shepherds of Arcadia by Nicolas Poussin, one of Tenier's paintings of St. Anthony, and a portrait of Pope Celestin V. Here was a definite clue. Shepherdess, no temptation, that Poussin Tenier hold the key. Why had Saunière purchased paintings by the 2 artists mentioned in this decipherment? What was the link? At the time, it wasn't clear which painting by Tenier had been purchased by Saunière, but there is only one Shepherds of Arcadia, Les Bergers d'Arcadie by Nicolas Poussin.
3 shepherds and a shepherdess looking at a tomb, in what I was told was a fictional landscape, an imaginary tomb in an imaginary landscape.
2 of the shepherds point out the enigmatic phrase inscribed on the tomb, "Et in Arcadia ego." And with this phrase entering the tale, suddenly yet another part of the story began to make sense. This slab, now in the museum at Rennes-le-Château, originally lay on the grave of Marie de Blanchefort, who died in 1781. It's said that Béranger Saunière himself effaced the inscription on the gravestone, but originally it read thus. It too was reproduced in de Sède's book. The 2 outer columns looked simple enough, but their meaning had so far remained obscure. They appeared to be a combination of Latin and Greek, but only now, with the inscription on the Poussin tomb seen before him, did the penny drop for Lincoln. The message is in Latin, but it's only revealed when being seen as written in the Greek alphabet. When Lincoln transliterated the Greek symbols into the Roman alphabet, the 2 columns simply read, "Et in Arcadia ego." Curious enough, but also reproduced in Le Trésor Maudit was a reproduction of the inscription on the headstone of Marie de Blanchefort's grave. And it's the oddities on this carving that provide the key to the incredibly complex decipherment of the second parchment and that give us the Poussin message. Already the simple story of a priest, some parchment and a mythical treasure seemed to be taking on a new dimension and depth. But then something else happened. Something that would elevate the story of Rennes-le-Château beyond the little 20-minute TV insert first intended. Some photographs arrived in the post, again sent by de Sède. The photographs were of a tomb nestling in a pastoral landscape. But what was stunning was that the scenes seemed to be identical to the one depicted in the 17th century painting by Nicolas Poussin. De Sède also revealed that the scene in the photograph was easy to find, a mere 4 miles along the road west from Rennes-le-Château, near a village called Arc.
It was quite an extraordinary moment to drive along the road and see it in reality. There are arguments, of course, about how old the structure is. There isn't any evidence for its age. The question of whether Poussin painted that tomb remains open. There is no question, though, that he painted the landscape. Somebody could later have built the tomb to complete the picture. Or maybe it's been there for centuries. We just don't know. Having found the imaginary tomb in the imaginary landscape, which proved to be a real tomb in a real landscape, it's very sad to realize that that tomb now no longer exists. It was destroyed by the owner of the land because he was sick and tired of people coming and trying to break it open to find their mythical treasure.
But nothing can alter the landscape or the scene depicted by Poussin. Clearly this painting was important in the trail of clues which was now being uncovered. Did the Shepherds of Arcadia itself contain clues? Why had Béranger Saunière bought a copy of the painting from the Louvre? Could this canvas reveal the secret of Saunière's wealth? Did it indeed hold the key? Although Rennes-le-Château, Blanchefort, Cardoux and the Rock of Toustoun are clearly represented in the painting, the skyline descends in the centre, whereas in reality it climbs higher. Lincoln wondered if Poussin had originally painted the rising hillside and then later decided to change it. The question was easily resolved by having the Louvre Museum provide an X-ray of the painting. Disappointingly, the radiogram didn't reveal a painted-over hillside. But in studying the painting, Lincoln was becoming attuned to its details, and he noticed an anomaly. In the X-ray, the underpainting beneath this shepherd's wreath is visible, and here it can be seen that the line of the tomb is painted on top of the staff. In other words, the shepherd's staff had been painted before the tomb. Lincoln thought it odd that a foreground item should be painted before its background. What was important about the staff that it should be placed first? Having had his attention drawn to the staff, he was curious to see what else could be said about it. Well, it's divided by the shepherd's arm. But more than that, it is precisely divided in two by the shepherd's arm. These two distances are exactly equal. And this is the same distance as this, and this, and this, and this. This seemed a significant discovery. The repetition of a fixed measure throughout the canvas suggested an underlying structure, where a seemingly relaxed and fluid depiction of a natural scene was in fact being dictated by rigid rules. Expert help was needed, and this was sought from Professor Christopher Cornford of the Royal College of Art, who'd made a particular study of the geometrical composition of paintings. He'd already analysed another work of Poussin's in this way, and he agreed to do the same with the Shepherds of Arcadia. The outcome of this study was startling. Startling to Cornford, because in this painting, Poussin had structured the image not only using a technique which, as expected, conformed to the presiding Renaissance philosophy, but he'd also simultaneously employed an archaic Masonic geometric system which had been known to the ancient Egyptians. This technique should not have been present in a 17th century painting, and yet here it was, a masterpiece based on an ancient and mystical form, the pentacle.
Now, to say that Professor Cornford was surprised is a little bit of an understatement of what my reaction to it was, because suddenly again this five-pointed star image had raised itself. I'd found it in the parchment, and now here it was in the painting, and it didn't seem to have any significance whatsoever.